Today, on Energy Contact, when we speak about having courage or strength, or even audacity, we talk about having backbone, or we talk about having nerve or guts. But nerve, guts, spine, what do these things have to do with each other? Or what do they have to do with courage or strength? We're discovering on Energy Contact that there's no difference, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or otherwise. Today, we're going to find out more why all of these things lead us to the same place. So please summon up the nerve to stick around, because it's coming up right now on Energy Contact.
I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and doubt. Keep my mind on better things. He ain't gonna worry and I ain't gonna complain. I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping and doubt. Keep my mind on better things. Just keep my mind on better things.
Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself and seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion. There's no difference between mass and energy. We love to separate and categorize, but there's just no difference. And so all that health and growth and improvement take place at the interface, where we make that unseen energetic business contact this physical stuff right here. We're presenting on these shows a brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that and put up our first slide. Everyone please know that I'm not a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. This show is not a medical advice show in any way. I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer. So might you if you come to me, but state, federal, and local governments do not. There's important information on this slide. Please look through it thoroughly. And when, maybe we'll get it back up there for a second. And when you've got through it, I'll ask you to do another favor for me, is get a pencil and paper handy, because at the end of this show, we're going to roll some credits. And when those credits roll up, there'll be contact information for me. There comes the slide again. When that contact information comes, you'll want to take it down. You'll need a pencil and paper to do that. That information isn't up there very long. And so if you wait till the end of the show and you see it, you might run out of time. Today's show is show number 26. And if you're tuning in for the first time today, thank you. Thank you and welcome. There's plenty of valuable information on this show for you, I believe. These shows are sequential, so they do build. We are talking about things that we presented and introduced on previous shows. But I'm doing my very best to make each show as complete as possible, and I believe this show has great value for you on a standalone basis. I hope so. If you watch, it is one of your first times, and if what you see piques your interest, well, please look for previous shows airing at later times. You might find them either on this neighborhood or perhaps in the different cable neighborhoods of your friends. And finally, it is with great pleasure that I introduce my co-host to you. I'm going to introduce Slim to you, since we're investigating what it is that energy contacts in the physical self. We have to understand a couple of things, don't we? We have to understand something about energy, and this show certainly is about energy. It's what we're learning about. But that energy does us no good out there. We have to know a little something about what it is that the energy contacts. Slim is here to help us do that. Let's see if we can get Slim. There's Slim. So we're learning about what it is that the energy contacts. And to do that, we've got to learn about our body some. Remember, a body without energy is just a corpse. An energy without a body, it might be a number of things, but it's not human. All right, so previously on Energy Contact, we have been discussing the body intellect and the anatomy it builds. We've been speaking about that really for the whole series, about how the same materials in our brains that give us thought, recall, logic, memory, reason, recall, all of those things, they are really in every cell of our body. And so we've seen that we're, in very tangible ways, creations of our own thought. And we've learned about the internal forces and the external forces that animate us and act upon us, respectively. The internal forces are breath, heartbeat, rhythm, pulse, frequency, vibration, motion, wave. And the external forces, we've narrowed them down to about three things. Basically, energy that falls up, gravity that falls down, and entropy that falls apart. More recently, we've been looking at our spines. We've looked at them structurally, and then also we've been looking at the nervous system that runs through our spines. And we've spoken just a little bit about this mysterious energy that the old mystics called Kundalini energy. We've observed what all of these things have to do with our core, with our very core. Today, we're still looking at all that stuff. We're going to continue on with the nervous system. We're looking in the context of how energy moves upward from our pelvis through our spines. Our pelvis is our main horizontal structure, and that energy moves up through there, and we're moving up with it, right up our spines to our brain. And again, today specifically, we want to see what's going on in our spines besides the structure. We want to see not only energy moving up the spine, but as it moves up the spine out to the periphery of us. What that means is that we are investigating the relationship between our spines and our nervous system. And even more specifically, we want to investigate a newly discovered portion of the nervous system known as the enteric nervous system. We're going to talk a lot about that today. We want to see what it has to do with energy flow, with Kundalini, and with our core. Ultimately, we want to get to the understanding of how we block our energy flows so we can unclog it, and then allow our spine to facilitate that upward flow of Kundalini energy. All right, but now this is the point in our program where we visualize. We're going to take our virtual journey, a field trip, if you will, in our mind's eye. Today, we're going to go to a computer company, and you're going to imagine, if you will, that you're a computer expert, a techie, a geek. And you're in this place to acquire a computer. And it's a high-tech place. So you're looking at all these huge supercomputers. And they've got all the screens and the sounds and the wireless gizmos and the gadgets and the bells and the whistles. As you look at that, you realize you have some specific tasks you need to do. And you want to find just the right machine. About that time, somebody hands you a little small thing, smaller than a cell phone. One that fits easily into the palm of your hand. Just a little memory chip, and very little else. No screen, no keyboard, no mouse, no nothing. And so you ask somebody, well, how do I program it? And they say, yeah, the program's manufactured right into the chip. We'll put it right in there, it's hardwired. About that time you think, you know what, for most high-tech uses, this thing might be pretty useless to me. But it could do a small array of sophisticated tasks very, very well, perhaps even more efficiently than the big super things could do. Deciding there's a place for that, you take it. That's the one you take, and you're pleased to have this microchip, and it does exactly what you want it to do. Hold that thought, because we're coming back to it. But right now, we're going to review some stuff that we've been looking at about the nervous system. Let's go ahead and put that next slide right up there. And we're going to take a review of our nervous system. The nervous system in general can be thought of as the chief coordinating agency of all the body parts and functions, like the function of an orchestra conductor. There are two basic divisions of the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. That thing there on the left of your screen is the central nervous system. You see there that there's a brain and something that resembles a spine, but look close, there's no vertebrae on that picture. It's the spinal cord. Looks a little like a snake, doesn't it? We'll talk a little bit more about the spinal cord next show. On the right of that screen is a portion of the peripheral nervous system. That's where we're headed in just a moment. All right, for now, let's come back here. The central nervous system, says the textbook, is the master system for processing incoming sensory information and sending out outgoing motor commands. Sounds lofty. We're going to explain the words sensory and motor in just a second. For today, really all we want to do is think of the central nervous system as sort of the command center, and the peripheral nervous system that we'll be investigating as the things that sort of plug into it. All right, the nervous system in general, though, is what allows the body to adapt continually to all the stuff going on all around us, stuff we call stimuli, internal and external forces. But wait a minute, internal and external forces. We've seen that before. Are these internal and external forces the same? Oh yes. The internal forces, we discovered, are breath, heartbeat, rhythm, pulse, vibration, frequency. These are intangible things. We can't go over to the market and pick up a couple of pounds of frequency. Yet without them, we're just a dead body. We're just a corpse. And then there's those external forces too. Gravity, energy, and entropy. The nervous system has to do with all that. We want to quickly travel down the organization of the nervous system until we get to the parts that we want to deal with, the parts that are automatic, that tie our spine to our core. So let's put up the next slide here. And what you see there is a large organization chart. There's just all sorts of stuff on that, and you don't need to know it. We just want to sort of climb down the right side of this chart here. You can see right up near the top there that the second row says central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. In just a second, we're going to expand that side that says peripheral nervous system. That peripheral system includes the thinking and intellect that's going on without your brain's involvement. This is old science for the most part, way before Einstein. But we're getting to a little new science also. Let's go from that slide to the next slide, and you'll see what happens is we've taken all that central nervous system stuff off of there. Now we can start to see the forest for the trees a little bit. And as you look at this, hang on if you will while we discuss a little anatomy. We're going to throw out some vocabulary, but please don't get intimidated or get lost. We're basically just climbing down this chart till we get to the part that we want to get to. That peripheral system is composed of two main components, the sensory system and the motor system. And then that motor system is composed of two main parts, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system consists of voluntary peripheral nerve fibers, says the textbook, that send sensory information to the central nervous system from the nerves all over the body and sends out motor nerve impulses that project from the central nervous system to our muscles. I hope I haven't lost you with that, but we're going to make sense of it. Let's come back here. I promised you I would explain to you the terms sensory and motor. There's a reason to know those terms, and so we'll look at them. The sensory system, all it means, it's simple really. The sensory system are the cells that send messages from the outsides of us to the central nervous system. And the motor system is what sends things from the central system to the periphery. So, for example, let's say you're out passing a rose bush and you go to pick a rose and you put your fingers on the thorn. the sensory system says, out sharp, and the motor system says, let go. All that goes on without having to send a message up to the brain, process the thought, and send it back. All right, so finally we're working our way down this maze, and we're getting close to the part of the nervous system that we're really interested in. So let's take a look at another slide, and here's the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic effectively means automatic, or more accurately, the automatic response to stimulus. When you hear about involuntary actions, you're hearing about something that the autonomic nervous system is doing. It doesn't require master brain thought, it doesn't require volition, it doesn't use the brain at all. You'll recall from the last program that the autonomic system itself consists of three parts, and there they are, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, and the enteric. We're going to go over two of these, again, reviewing from last show. And so let's bring up the next slide, and here's a little chart and an overview of the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Take just a second with them. The sympathetic system is the system that operates automatically, but when we're awake. It's our conscious nervous system, and it manages lots of stuff, fight or flight stuff, preparedness and response, stress, things that hurt, making the pain go away, things like that. The parasympathetic system, you see also operating out of your spine there, operates automatically when we're asleep or relaxed or meditating. It's our repair and refresh system. And as we discovered, a lot of us never repair because we never relax, even when we are asleep. We're too hyped up. Well, we have to get in touch with that parasympathetic system if we ever expect to have health or happiness. To get in touch with that, we need to get in touch with our intestines, our core. Core. There's that word again. Funny we should mention the word core because it brings us to the third part of the autonomic nervous system. Let's come back up here. That third part is called the enteric nervous system, and it's in our core. That enteric nervous system, here's some news for you. It has its own brain and its own intellect. What? We have a second brain? Oh yes. Yes, we do. Science has only known about this enteric system for a few years, maybe 30 years or so. It came up in the 70s. But old mystics and old yogis knew it 10,000 years ago. We started off this show talking about where the spine meets the core. Well, congratulations, we found it. The whole peripheral nervous system begins at the spinal cord, which plugs into the central nervous system and manages how the body relates to the brain. But through that, we get to the intestines, which relate to this other brain. It's the microchip. It thinks about a few less things, and the input-output mechanisms are a little different, but it manages those few things better than the supercomputer does. The enteric system, it does think and work differently than everything else in the nervous system. Let's go back to the history of it, back to the early days of life on Earth, millions of years before the dinosaurs, before our predecessors even came out of the sea, when animal life was first evolving. At that time, thinking about tomorrow didn't exist. As a matter of fact, thinking didn't exist. There was no thinking going on at all, not as we define it. No brain at all, no spine. That's when the enteric system was installed, if you will. They're in our evolutionary ancestors, invertebrates, means they had no spine. And it was the only system, the only brain that existed. So what did these creatures have? They didn't have all these highfalutin thought processes. They had what we call now instinct. And basically their life consisted of two chores. One was to find food, and two was to make sure that they didn't become food. Both of those things explain why the first brain to develop was in the digestive system. It makes sense when you think about it. Those of you who saw the previous programs we did on Maslow's need hierarchy we'll get a little bit greater meaning of how this relates to our primitive level human nature things. Enteric, by the way, just means intestinal. If you've ever heard of enteric aspirin, it just means aspirin that's coated so that it dissolves in your intestines, won't upset your stomach. But let's stay focused on this gut brain, this microchip. It is a microchip. It's a meshwork of nerve fibers that operate in the viscera. That's our guts, it's our intestines, it's our core. They operate from there, but they influence a lot more. The enteric system is located in the sheaths of tissue lining our guts. It goes up as high as our esophagus, but it's centered right in our small and large intestines. It's ancient, simple, primitive, and incredibly primitive at what it does. And it operates when we're alert, like the sympathetic system. And it operates when we're resting, like the parasympathetic system. All right, as we've seen, its main function is digestion. But it also manages some other things. It manages danger and survival responses. It manages a lot to do with the immune system. Among other things, all that's going on in there. It causes the digestive system to nourish us, but at danger, it causes it to shut down so we can devote that energy to other tasks. It causes the immune system to kick into gear. Or if we're messed up, it causes the immune system to break down. That enteric nervous system has over 100 million little nerves and neurons and gizmos in there. It's every bit as complex as the spinal cord that we know so much about. And like the spinal cord, it transmits, it processes, and it computes. But back to evolution. As animals evolved, brains and spines appeared. They arrived on the scene. But instead of replacing this instinct, the head and the brain just sort of hooked up to it, plugged in the microchip, if you will, to the big supercomputer. And so while this enteric system predates us, predates all vertebrates, it's still present in all vertebrates. That's why, even though you're so darn smart, you still operate and respond most of the time to instinct and stimulus. If you'll remember the shows we did many shows ago, we talked about the core. Now you see why it is that the core manages all of those complex things. All right, modern science didn't really discover this brain until the 1970s, and we're still deciphering it today. But it's always been right there, discovered or not. Just because there's a lot of smart people that don't see something doesn't mean that it's not there. But it's new enough where we're still learning about it and still learning what it does. Just like the brain in your head, this enteric system has its own self-standing, independent network, its own separate hub. It's able to learn, to act independently, to remember, and it's the home of our gut feelings. Wait a minute, gut feelings, we've spoken about that before too. It's the core. It's the body intellect. Now we know that the term gut feelings is not just a metaphor that somebody made up. We were describing something in our non-scientific terminology that science didn't figure out till later. It has a major role, this enteric system, in the state of human emotion. In happiness and misery, we're discovering unseen things, energy. Says who? Tree huggers and sprout eaters? No, this is the stuff of smart scientists and Nobel Prize winners. But how is it? How do our guts feel? Well, remember way, way back, those of you who are watching the first episodes of Energy Contact, we talked about how our development begins very early in the womb, how our body intellect is born sort of in the first days in the womb. Well, that's where both brains develop too, and from the same place. They develop in a structure called the neural crest, which, here's a little test for those of you who've been watching a long time. The neural crest develops in the ectoderm. If that's a term you don't know, don't worry about it. The neural crest appears and divides during early fetal development to form the big computer and the little computer, the microchip, as well as the spinal cord and the nervous system in general. Let's bring up another slide. Here's a slide that you haven't seen in quite a long time. It's a picture of the cells first dividing early in the womb. Cells duplicate exactly for the most part. So you can see that all of the same material on one side of that dividing cell must be in the other side. And so now you're starting to understand body intellect. Everything that's in that cell that's going to the brain is going to the guts. And by the way, it's going to everywhere else in the body. Very early in the womb, as cells divide, those cells could be going anywhere. But then that neural crest develops, and it starts to create a little more order. But when these cells divide, the neural crest can deliberately split them, but then it starts sending them to more orchestrated places. And it starts sending them to the core. It starts sending brain material to the core. All right, let's come back up here. So you're thinking, Joseph, all this stuff is very interesting, but what's the point? And what does it have to do with energy contact? And by the way, so what? So what? So what? It's got everything to do with it. Everything. Now you can understand why we get literally bent over with stress. You can understand what our cores and our intestines have to do with deforming our physical structures. When we're in danger, that digestive system stops digesting because we need that energy for emergency power. And that spine curves forward instinctively to protect all of this stuff. It protects it for a moment. It's designed to protect it for a moment. But we forget to let go, and we forget to relax. Animals have the same response, and they're in danger more often. But they know that it's instantaneous, and they let go. We're a little too smart to do that. And so when we convert this instantaneous event into a lifestyle, we get stuck. And our backs contort in the chain reaction we've looked at in previous shows. And our necks disappear and our shoulders go up. And we get digestion problems, diarrhea, constipation, nausea. And we stay that way because we're permanently fixed in what should be an instantaneous position. Because we're out of touch with our core, our nervous system is playing along, and that contorts us. All right, knowing that, you know the way to get out. I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in energy contact.
I'm gonna